Hi, everyone. I'm Shelley Kupfer from Washington, D.C., Chair of National Women's Philanthropy, and welcome to the session, Altered Weddings, Zoom Baby Namings, and Social Distance Funerals, Reinterpreting Ritual During COVID. Recordings of this session and all the other workshops will be available online after the GA ends. And I do hope you will also join us this evening at 7 p.m. Eastern Time for the Federation Together plenary. COVID has paused lots of things, but it hasn't stopped Jewish life cycle events. On the other hand, it has raised a lot of questions. Can you name your baby when your rabbi can't be there? What is marriage without witnesses, without hundreds of family and friends surrounding you? Can you sit Shiva when no one can come to your home? When we strip away the familiar trappings of these rituals, what's left? Creative people across the country are tackling these questions every day. They're thinking deeply about the essence of Jewish ritual and finding ways to make them meaningful in the era of physical distancing. Today, we're going to hear about some of their innovative work and consider what we can learn about ritual during COVID and in our future. So I'm pleased to welcome our speakers for this workshop. Stephanie Goldfarb, Chicago City Director for Honeymoon Israel, Jody Bromberg, the CEO of 18 Doors, Rabbi Leora Kay, Director of Program at the Union for Reform Judaism, and Rabbi Esther Liederman, Director of Congregational Innovation at the Union for Reform Judaism. Rabbis Kay and Liederman will be framing and moderating our conversation. So welcome, panelists.
Hi, everybody. My name is Leora Kay. I am a rabbi, as Shelley just mentioned. I work with the Union for Reform Judaism, and my pronouns are she, hers. So first, we want to welcome everybody here today. The reality is that we've all been placed in a situation in the last number of months where challenge and pain and uncertainty are largely being met with innovation and creativity and support, the way that we would hope in our Jewish community. That's something to acknowledge. It's worth pointing out. And we're just at the point in Torah where we've just read the story of Noah and about believing in something that can grow from destruction. It's a worthwhile message for us to listen to and to remember. There's a story that it reminds me of about kind of how you can get up and go, what you have to do when you are challenged. And it's a story that you have to imagine happens pre-COVID. So it was cold out, so cold. The kind of cold that you can feel all the way down into your bones. And the shamus, the person who takes care of all kinds of things in the synagogue, was the only one who was in the synagogue that morning. And it was early when all of a sudden the rabbi came running into the synagogue. The shamus was a little bit surprised. It wasn't so much that the rabbi never came in early, but this early, not so often. Shamus asked the rabbi why he came in so early this morning when it was so cold out and kind of miserable. Why come so early to the synagogue? The rabbi looked a little sheepish and he said, well, I guess I'll be honest with you. We spend a lot of time together, you and me. I'll tell you why. This morning when I woke up, I saw Satan standing right over my bed. That evil spirit was just sort of waiting for me. And when I asked him what he wanted, he didn't frighten me. I was just a little bit curious for sure. The shamus looked at him and said, you weren't frightened? If that evil spirit was standing over my bed, I would for sure be a little bit afraid, Rabbi. This time I wasn't, he said. So as I was saying, I asked Satan, what is it that you want? And Satan, with the nicest smile, so early said to me, Rabbi, I only want what's best for you. It's cold out there, Rabbi, so cold. I think it's best if you just stay in your bed today for a little while longer. Why go out there and feel that cold reach all the way down into your bones? And I answered, I need to get to the synagogue to do my work. I need to help lead Shacharit, the morning prayers. I need to help the people who come to meet with me. I need to teach the students in Cheder, the classes that they come to in the afternoons. They've just come back from winter vacation. They're eager to learn. I can't stay in bed all day. But Satan said, don't you two deserve a break? Don't you? You work hard for them all the time. It's so cold. Your bed, it's so warm. And I shoot him out. And as I got dressed as quickly as I could. And I ran over here to get my day going in the holy work of the synagogue and bringing people together in community. But why? Asked the shamus. Why? Asked the rabbi. Because I figured if Satan was willing to get up so early to try to do his job, I should be at least as willing to get up early and start doing mine. Luckily, he was not so successful, but hopefully we will be. So this story kind of frames for all of us, I think, at least for me, what it means to be shifting ritual and changing ritual in a time that has been challenging. Now, I don't believe that Satan has given us the situation that we're in, but we are in a situation that requires us to respond. And lots of clergy and lots of synagogue staff and lots of lay leaders have been doing that. They've been saying, we can respond to this with creativity, and we can respond to this in a way that brings our community closer and brings our community together. It doesn't necessarily only have to happen in a time like this. The fact of the matter is, and I learned this from my father, a Jewish educator in his own right, Jerry Kay, that at the root of the word ritual, really, it's the root of the word spirituality. That all of these things that we work on, all of these things that we do to put a framework into place to figure out how we move through our days also helps ground us in what it is that we believe about our lives and ourselves and our communities that bring spirituality together.
Hi, everyone. Rabbi Esther Letterman using she, her pronouns. I want to give you a definition of ritual that I've pulled from this person on the screen. Hopefully you can see the author of this book, Rituals for Work, Kursat Ozenc, who actually teaches at the Stanford Institute of Design, the D School, who defines ritual as actions that a person or group does repeatedly following a similar pattern or script in which they've imbued symbolism and meaning. So we really wanted to give you a general description of ritual that is going to help imbue our own conversation about reimagining ritual today. So Rabbi Kay, I'm going to give it back to you.
So what we actually wanted was to take a little bit of a step out and do like a bit of a meta thing. If we're going to talk about ritual, then we should actually have a ritual that we're doing here today. So we're going to do this 3 times. Right now, I want you to take a look around where you are. And I want you to see what you see in your line of sight that describes how you feel right now at this moment, 1:09 on my computer. So put that in the chat and make sure when you're chatting that you're saying to panelists and everyone, right? You have a couple of drop-down choices. So we just want to make sure that we all get to see it. So it says all panelists and attendees. So we'd love for people to share. Just take one moment. What do you see in your line of sight that describes How you feel right now? Great, beautiful, sunny skies. I see someone sees clutter. Yeah. Coffee, good. Ah, snow. I think you must be in the Midwest with my people.
Oh,
It's great. Thank you for participating and doing this with us. Sunday Times. Yeah.
these are great. Oh, Hawaii sunrise, I want to be with you.
So Esther is now going to take us through our next piece of
Great.
what I'd like you to do.
Great. So this is probably a new technology for some of you, or maybe something you've seen before. And we want you to answer the question. I'm going to state the question, then I'm going to tell you what to do slowly. What is a ritual that was most powerful to you in the last year, in the last 5 years, and in your whole life? So if you have a phone, Android or iPhone, mine happens to be an iPhone, take your camera, hold it up to the code, and you should see popping up on your computer, on your phone, open menti.com in Safari, and sort of click that and it'll take you there. If this is not the right way for you to access technology, we invite you to go to, on your computer, www.menti.com and use the code 7122256, and then it will take you to this website. And we're asking you to answer this 3-part question in 3 boxes. Enter a word for the ritual that was most powerful to you in the last year. Enter a word for the ritual that was most powerful to you in the last 5 years. And enter a word for the ritual that was most meaningful to you in your whole life. So I'm going to give people an opportunity to do this. Menti.com. Yep. Thank you. Hopefully people have had a chance to do that. I'm seeing that in the chat there are links, which is great. I'm going to go to the next page and share with you. Oh, share with you. Sorry. Share with you the Mentimeter results. So people can see this changing in real time on the screen. All of the ways we've had rituals that have been meaningful to us. And for those who are new to Mentimeter or the word cloud, the larger ones are the ones that are coming in multiple times. So wedding, funeral, Kaddish, Shabbat, baking challah are there have been a number of those. And then the smaller ones are the individual or other ones. Going to URJ Kutz camp, I see, mikvah. Praying for clarity, first child's wedding, morning meditation. And there's just some really, I'm feeling surrounded by all this incredible ritual that exists in our tradition, but also the rituals we've created for ourselves through this. Shabbat girlfriends, like I'm just noticing, I'm just picking up pieces that are speaking to me, but as you look at it, as it shifts and melds, you'll see others. Sukkot drive-through journaling. So I'm going to now take an opportunity to, I'm going to pass it off to our first panelist, Jody Bromberg. And just as I do that, I'll just say we do have time for questions through each of our panelists. So please, if you can see at the bottom, the Q&A button, if you have questions that are coming up for you for the panelists, we hope to get to them. So I invite you to use that. And I'm going to invite Jody to come on and introduce herself.
Thanks so much, Rabbi Esther. It's great to be with you all today, and it's so interesting, the Mentimeter to see weddings be at the center of the thing that came up most frequently for folks, because I feel like that is also at the center of so much of the work that we do at 18 Doors. So I'm so happy to be here with you as the CEO of 18 Doors, formerly Interfaith Family. We are the only national organization exclusively focused on supporting interfaith families who have one partner who's Jewish and one partner who grew up in a different faith tradition or no faith tradition. And today we are talking about ritual and what it means and how it's evolved relative to COVID-19 and the pandemic. But before I get into that, I wanted to share with you a story. Recently, I received a phone call from a young Jewish man in Canada who'd been dating a Catholic woman. And things were getting more serious, and he just invited her over for Shabbat dinner together, and he really, really liked her. But he wondered at the same time, like, if they got more serious, how would that work? How could they navigate his Jewish upbringing and commitment to building a Jewish home with her Catholic observance? And I talked to him for a few minutes, and this is not something I do as a matter of course in my position. And I could tell he was really, really upset. And he said, and finally he kind of took this long, deep sigh. And he said to me, listen, it took me so long to meet someone I connect with, but a Jewish home is really important to me, and Jewish kids are really important to me. And I don't really know how to square the two. And so I offered to connect him with one of the rabbis in our network. And I also let him know about a few upcoming programs that we were running online where he and his girlfriend could meet other couples like them. I pointed him to our website and really, a place where he could get ideas for questions that he and his girlfriend could discuss together. And I bring this example up because in a nutshell, this is the work that we do at 18 Doors. And this is just a really good example of it. We support new interfaith couples and parents with young children as they navigate through their lives together and the religious differences. And our work is really around providing them opportunities to have a supportive and inclusive connection to Jewish life. And the main ways that we do that are through our website resources, through our social programs, through our programs with Jewish content, and then through training and building networks of inclusive rabbis through our Rook and Rabbinic Fellowship program, and training and providing professional development with Jewish organizations as well. Next slide. So why do we do this work? Really, this work for us is rooted just simply in the fact that interfaith couples like Richard are the fastest growing population among conservative, reform, Reconstructionist, and non-denominational Jewish communities. So I'm sure many of the folks on this call know that among that group, 71% of the Jews who've gotten married in the last 20 years have married someone who's not Jewish. So, as I often say, we're not a drop in the ocean, we are the ocean. So the mission of 18 Doors is really around empowering people in interfaith relationships to engage in Jewish life and make Jewish choices and encourage Jewish communities along the way to welcome and include them. We really want to be sure that interfaith couples and parents of young children have an open-hearted, inclusive place for them to explore Jewish life. So we have always viewed ritual expansively because in part, I think our mission really focused on what couples and families need. And we went through a name change from Interfaith Family to 18 Doors earlier this year. And a large part of the reason that we did that is that we wanted a name that showed not only the diversity of couples that we work with, but also the diversity of journeys that they go on, the doors along the way that they open. So we provide connection points to ritual, like ways to mark life moments using Jewish concepts and traditions, really in 3 different ways. One, through creative ideas on ritual and Jewish tradition through 18 Doors' website. The second is through the Jewish Clergy Referral Service. And then finally, through programs to connect with other couples and a rabbi to personalize those rituals. So next slide, please. Thanks. So when the pandemic first shut down, I think like everyone else, we pivoted and began thinking about Passover, which was coming up really quickly. One of the ways that we did so was really providing resources of Passover Zeders that were happening around the country through different organizations, downloadable Haggadot. But we also ran programs like how to host a Seder for the first time to give the couples and families that we work with the confidence and knowledge that they needed to pull off a Passover Seder on their own. Because we know from our research that one of the things that most interfaith couples and families do, if they're not doing anything else connected to Jewish life, is they are typically going to a Passover Seder. One of the most popular pieces of content we created was I think one of the things that I think best exemplifies the work that we do, which is this article around Seder plate substitution, particularly during the quarantine, but really I think could happen at any point. So if you can't find something for your Seder plate, what are you using instead? And I think this is kind of at the heart of what we do, which is taking religious traditions and providing entry points that meet the moment. So if you can't find a roasted egg, it's fine. Use an avocado or a pit or even a flower. You can't find horseradish for maror or the bitter herb. Use a bitter green like arugula or kale. This particular piece was picked up by the secular media, by CNN, and also Heavy, another website. And our website overall, depending on the year, gets somewhere between 700,000 and 1 million unique visitors coming to it over the course of the year. Next slide. So I talked about one piece of content, which really is around holiday traditions and rituals surrounding it. The other, of course, for us is around life cycle events. So one of the things when the pandemic happened, one of the things that happened was that we heard from lots of couples getting married who were bereft and really heartbroken about having to cancel or postpone their weddings and really trying to figure out what they were doing next. So the first thing that we did is we pulled together resources for what to think about if you needed to postpone one of the most important days of your life, like the checklist that's featured here. And then the other piece was really just reassuring stories like this one by actually one of our staff members who talk about what happens, how you can continue on with your life, even when you're postponing your nuptials, right? You're postponing your wedding, but your marriage is going to continue on and could even sort of start even before that all important day. Next slide. And then we did the same thing for new parents about to give birth, focusing first on our website on like concrete aspects, touchless aspects of running things like a virtual bris or virtual baby naming. And then also providing reassuring concepts along the way. So we put out a particular email series specifically around parenting during quarantine, knowing that that was like a particular pain point for the couples and parents of young families that we work with. Next slide. So as many of you know, 18 Doors has run a Jewish clergy referral service for about the past decade. And I think here it provided a pivotal moment, a pivotal role in this moment for a couple reasons. So we have more than 700 rabbis and cantors on our service. And we overhauled the service at the beginning of the year when we went through our rebranding and we rolled out a new website. So now it's an open source database where you can search for clergy for your wedding or your bris or your baby naming or your conversion or your counseling or your funeral, in much the same way that if you go to Yelp or because you're looking for a restaurant or care.com because you are looking for a care provider for a child or elderly parents. And we weren't really sure what would happen because in March, when everything closed down, the number of requests we received just tanked. And we thought that our requests would continue to be very low for the entire year. But the thing that happened instead is that the number of requests we got came back with a vengeance and actually increased about 20% year over year. And I think that that goes to the fact that people were still trying to figure out how to move forward with ritual in their lives, how to get married and have baby namings. And I think the other important piece around us was we also saw a huge increase in requests for Jewish clergy to work with folks for conversions. as people think about their spiritual lives and what they want to be. This is just an opportunity where we didn't anticipate the demand that we would see over the last 8 months. And then on the clergy side, we also supported rabbis and cantors with discussion forums where they could bounce ideas off of one another. How do I officiate at a virtual baby naming? How do I officiate at a virtual funeral? What are my boundaries around doing in-person events? And if I'm officiating at 2 events, a virtual one now and a real one later, like what should the cost be around that? What precautions do I need to take? But overall, I think we really provided a space for rabbis to just talk with one another and know that they were all in it together and figuring it out together. Next slide, please. And then we did the same thing for couples getting married. We provided them with a space to commiserate, to talk, to build relationships with one another and the rabbis who facilitated the discussions. And these range from discussion groups that were more kind of tactical in nature, like around planning your wedding, around ceremonies and events, to things that are more social, like the Shabbat dinners we've done with One Table in Partnership. We've also continued to do programs that bring the DIY element to Jewish life, giving couples a chance to personalize Jewish life and ritual, like the program we recently did with one of our Rook and Rabbinic fellows on personalizing and customizing the 7 blessings, the Sheva Brachot. Next slide. One of the new pilots that we're really excited about is a program that we rolled out recently, sort of in response to the pandemic. It's called Our Year of Firsts, and it's for engaged couples and newlyweds. And it couples like subscription box components, because we send things to couples participating about 4 times over the course of the year, with a small group program that holds a space for couples to think about their religious traditions together and how they might think about them. In the first meeting of the couples together, it was a really big hit, and it was supposed to meet quarterly. It was only supposed to meet 4 times a year. But one of the things that happened is that the couples who were there, they all said, no, we want to meet more often. We have lots of things we want to talk about. And so they created a list together of subjects that they wanted to talk about. And now, instead of meeting quarterly, are meeting monthly. Just in closing, this has been like a time of incredible innovation at 18 Doors. And between our rabbinic fellows and our staff, we've run more than 90 different program sessions over the last 6 months, which is about 50% more than we ran the year before. Most of them are meant to be really intimate spaces for couples to get to know one another and the rabbi facilitating. But despite that, we've also reached about 1.5 to 2 times more people year to date than we have the year prior. It's a really exciting time for us as we continue to respond to what couples and parents need in the moment. And I'm very excited to be here with you today. And I'll stop now and open up for questions.
So Jody, one of the first questions that somebody chatted in was that they actually wanted a little bit more of a description about the significance behind the name 18 Doors.
Yep, that's a great question. So one of the things we heard when we were interfaith family is that lots of the couples that we worked with, interfaith didn't necessarily resonate in a way for them. And so one of the things that came out of our strategic planning process with this was the idea that we ought to rebrand so that we were meeting the needs and identifying with all the couples and families that we were working with. So 18 Doors specifically, the name we landed on for a couple different reasons. One, we wanted a creative name that was in this time of Amazon and Twitter and Google, we wanted a name that was creative, that was evocative of a concept of openness, a concept of many different ways to explore something. So we settled on 18 Doors for a few different reasons. One, 18 Doors exemplifies, as I said earlier, the diversity of interfaith couples and families as they exist, that there are so many different iterations that we don't often talk about. We talk about them monolithically, and we didn't want to continue doing so. 2 was just the many different journeys that they and paths to Jewish life, the doors that they open. 3 is the way that 18, of course, an important number in Jewish life, is evocative of high and life, and us being a Jewish organization. And then finally, the idea of doors was a homonym for lador vador. It's a Jewish concept of passing things from generation to generation. which is kind of one important piece of the work that we're doing. And so all of those, we landed on 18 doors. And it's been well received in the 6 months since we've rebranded and rolled it out.
So another question that came in, Jody, this is the ghostly voice from the beyond. It's Leora K handing me the questions. Another question that came in was, are the unions in which one partner converts to the other faith included in the statistic that you had mentioned earlier?
No, so that statistic comes, that's a great question. And I should take the moment to, Rabbi Leora, thank you for playing Q&A with us today.
Sure, sure.
You know, that statistic is not included. The stat number that I named, the 71%, comes from the 2013 Pew Report on Jewish Americans. And to my knowledge, that simply looks at couples where one person is Jewish and one is not, and is not converting before the marriage.
So another that came in, and I don't even know the answer to this question. Actually, I think I probably do. But is your programming available to fully Jewish experienced couples rather than just those with one partner from a different faith? Can anybody come to 18 Doors?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we are, listen, we are as a mission laser focused on interfaith couples, but our doors are wide open for anyone who wants to participate and take advantage of the programs and resources that we have to offer.
Great. Here's another one. Best advice, : if the wedding is for next fall, how to best plan during the unknown?
Whew. Yeah, I mean, I think that's, so the first thing I would do is I would prioritize, I would create a list of priorities on what's most important in the wedding. What are your kind of must-haves? I would contact the Jewish clergy that you plan to officiate at the event on the front end. I think one of the things that we have often seen is that people wait too long to have a conversation with an officiant. They schedule the date first, they schedule the place that they're going to do it. So I would open up that conversation early on, because that clergy person is going to be super helpful in, I think, in guiding and facilitating that conversation. And, you know, I think it's anybody's guess where we will be next fall, hopefully in a much more open environment than we find ourselves right now. But I think there are too many unknowns at this point. And then I would, you know, and then lastly, I would begin having a couple different scenarios. One that might have a smaller group component, and one that might have a, you know, the wedding maybe of your dreams, which is maybe larger, and figure out what your inflection points, what your decision points are around decision making for which path you take.
Yeah, almost like scenario planning.
Totally. I think that's exactly.
Yeah. I hate to take something that's beautiful and wonderful and spiritual and just sort of put it in the pragmatic, but sometimes that's part of what this is all about. One last question, Jody, is that somebody also asked a question actually about ideas on making meaningful bereavement experiences at this time.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is among the most painful pieces of life cycle events around the pandemic. And I think in this environment, you have to think about what are the things, if any, that you can do in person. What are the things that you're going to want to have a broader community that can maybe only participate in the virtual space? And then what are the longer term pieces? I had an opportunity to attend a very small funeral of someone very dear to me early on. That was in person, but socially distanced. And then in this particular case, they also offered spiritual, it's kind of a spiritual gathering space via Zoom, and then through a Facebook group, a closed Facebook group, that folks could continue to share memories and connect and commiserate together. And then in this particular instance, the plan going forward is that at the moment that we can all be together again in person, to then come together again for a memorial making opportunity. And I think that this is such, it's so challenging, and I think that there is going to continue to be a wealth of information that bubbles up about how we can do death and mourning in a more communal way than maybe we often even do right now when we are all able to gather together. I know it's something that we're thinking about at 18 Doors, and I'm sure we're not alone among Jewish organizations. So I think there's a lot of work to be done here.
Thanks. And I think you are passing this on to Stephanie now.
Yeah, so it is I'm so happy to introduce Stephanie Goldfarb from Honeymoon Israel. And Stephanie, I will let you take it away.
Thank you, Jody. So nice to see you, and so glad to be here with everybody. 18 Doors is a very important community partner for Honeymoon Israel, and it's so nice to be in space with you because our work is so parallel and it's also so enmeshed, and we work with so many of the same couples, and I just really appreciate the opportunity to share space with you. So again, my name is Stephanie Goldfarb. I'm the Director of Community Engagement for Honeymoon Israel in Chicago. I have the best job in the world, even though I'm not getting on an airplane 4 times a year to travel to Israel. And I'm really excited to share with you a little bit about the way that Honeymoon Israel is utilizing ritual space to keep communities really nourished and engaged in Jewish thought. And before I go into some examples of some of the work that we're doing, I just want to make sure that everyone sort of knows what Honeymoon Israel is. So I'm going to take a minute just to explain who we are and the work that we do and the couples that we serve. So Honeymoon Israel is a national organization, and we are operating in 20 different cities right now, which is just incredible. We've only been around for, I think, 5 years at this point, 4 or 5 years at this point. We've grown very, very quickly in that time. And we serve couples. Similarly to 18 Doors, we serve young couples, specifically in the age range of 25 to 40. And about 70% of our couples are in interfaith relationships. And the other 30% of our couples are in Jewish relationships. Maybe somebody is on their way to converting or already converted. A lot of our couples we work with a lot of queer couples, people of color. Our mission really is to work with couples who are historically sort of on the fringes, on the margins of organized Jewish community. Many of our couples have had mixed experiences with Jewish community, and some have felt not welcomed. We welcome people into, Honeymoon Israel welcomes couples into Jewish community in some very radically inclusive ways. And one of the ways, and the reason why we're good at what we do is because we have really profound respect for our couples and their lived experiences and all of the strengths that they bring to the Jewish community, regardless of their Jewish knowledge, their Jewish comfort, their sense of belonging in Jewish community. And ritual is one of the backbones of what we do. Typically, we take cohorts of 20 couples each on an amazing trip to Israel, a 10-day trip to Israel, and that really sparks their journey into Honeymoon Israel land. And of course, because of COVID, the Israel trip is sort of on the back burner, but we're continuing to do, actually, next slide, if you could show the next slide, we're continuing to do the work that we always do. We're just doing it in a much more profound way. The virtual space has actually really opened things up in many ways for us as an organization. Our post-trip model, which is how we refer to the work that we do, serving our couples once they get back from Israel, once they come back to their home city, which is nurturing their cohorts, nurturing their communities, and continuing to provide really high quality, immersive, experiential, culturally competent programs and opportunities to do Jewish together. These are people who are raising their hand to do Jewish, even though at least probably one person in the couple, sometimes even both, don't always have a lot of context, don't always have a lot of familiarity with what Judaism is. And we know that you can't do Judaism by yourself. You have to do it in community. So the biggest part of my job really is nurturing these communities. And as you can imagine, our couples are really thirsty for ritual. Many of them are within the 3 years that we tend to work in the life cycle of like a Honeymoon Israel couple. Many of our couples get engaged, get married, have children. You can imagine the life cycle events, you can imagine the ritual needs. But of course, this is also a moment of national, global anxiety, and the need for connection, the need for ritual, the need for meaning making is just, it's huge. We can barely keep up with the demand in terms of what our communities are expressing needs for. And I just want to really specify that the way that we do Jewish learning with Honeymoon Israel, the reason why I'm talking about learning is because we don't just present opportunities to engage in ritual. First, we do a lot of education to really bring people in a culturally competent way so that everyone feels a sense of ownership over the rituals, over the life cycle events, over the learning that they're doing. Next slide. I want to also, so I'll talk about, I've got 3 examples for you of the ways in which we've been operating in the ritual space virtually over the last 6 months or so. The first is a baby naming ceremony that happened in April. The second, I want to talk about some examples in which we're creating ritual spaces to really hold communities. And the third are our multi-sensory high holiday experiences. Next slide. Okay, so to begin with, this is Julia and Andrew and their baby Goldie. They were one of 10 couples who participated in a mass Jewish baby naming ceremony last April. This was an incredible event. It was originally supposed to be in person at a JCC here in Chicago, but of course COVID hit. We pivoted and we made it all online. We had 10, as I mentioned, 10 couples name a child that day. And we had 108 family members, grandparents, parents, community members on the call singing and dancing and just welcoming and loving these babies. We did an incredible amount of ritual for a pretty short event. We washed the baby's feet, we wrapped them in taluses, we said prayers over them. It was really a really special event. And it was very radical, unexpectedly, in 4 different ways. And I want to tell you more about that. Next slide. So this is Matthew and this is Grace. A little background on Matthew and Grace. So Matthew is a practicing Christian. Christianity is very, very important to him. And Grace is Jewish and Judaism is very important to her. And they had a lot, we worked very closely with them to make sure that this event was really representative of the 3 of them. And the ways that this event was unexpectedly radical. Number 1, I had to find the right rabbi to do this event. Specifically, many of the rabbis that I work with here in Chicago are rabbis who do interfaith weddings for sure. But when asked to do baby namings for the children that resulted from these interfaith marriages, most of the rabbis that I asked were not comfortable doing it because they knew that a lot of our couples were also baptizing some of their babies or doing other naming rituals or other sort of rituals. And I was really shocked actually to learn that was going to be an obstacle. So eventually found the right rabbi, Rabbi Jeff Stombaugh, who at the time was at Mishkan, is now at the Well, to do the rituals, to lead us through everything. Number 2, about more than half of our couples did not either know what a Jewish baby naming ceremony was or were not planning on doing one until we asked them, until we presented the opportunity. And once we did, of course they raised their hand. Of course they wanted to do it. So one of the beautiful things about this ritual space is that it made it accessible and doable in a way that in person may or may not have. And 3, the joy, I can't express to you the joy that was able to that we generated through this event, even though it was virtual, even though we had to pivot. It is possible to really create joy in virtual ritual spaces. And number 4, just the power in numbers, to have a mass Jewish baby naming, whereas most Jewish baby namings happen 1 baby at a time. It felt very radical and very cool to have all of these families together, each welcoming a baby into Jewish community. Okay, next slide. The next example that I want to share with you, a way that we've used Jewish community the way that we've used ritual to build Jewish community are these 4 examples. So specifically, we had a virtual love fest, AKA an ufruf, for a couple whose wedding was canceled very, very shortly after they came home from Israel. Everyone jumped on a call, had champagne, and we did a full-on ufruf with this couple, and really like celebrated their love in a way that they deserved. We also did a candle lighting, a shloshim event, which is, for those of you who don't know, is a memorial service that happens 7 days after Shiva. This was following the death of George Floyd, and we had a rabbi on a call. We had, I think we had around 200 people on that call to engaging in ritual, engaging in, oh, sorry, you there? Okay. Engaging in Jewish ritual to mark the passing of George Floyd and to create a really intentional Jewish space. Lastly, we're having, of course, Tat Shabbat, creating community spaces for families with children. And actually coming up this Friday, we're doing a ritual where we're doing a mass community breath before the election, just to have some solidarity with our community and to actually practice the ritual of blessing each other and to just create some sweetness before what will, definitely be a tense moment for our country. Lastly, next slide. Lastly, I want to just quickly go over some of our high holiday offerings this year. We did an incredible job this year with multi-sensory high holiday experiences. And what I mean by that is you can see sort of on the left here some of our offerings. We did everything from virtual workshops to challah baking to sending boxes, sort of like a subscription box, to people with all kinds of multi-sensory ways to help make meaning of the high holidays this year. We also created a suite of 10 different resources to help people create, to really make meaning and to locate themselves in time and space during the high holidays. And these are just a few examples of the ways in which we at Honeymoon Israel used ritual this year to bring people together and to help people navigate some of the obstacles around doing ritual by yourself in your home. And I think that's it. I think that's my time. I guess I'll open it up for questions.
Take just a couple of minutes, Stephanie, to ask a couple of questions. One is that somebody wanted to know whether or not Honeymoon Israel is planning any more community baby namings.
Absolutely, yes, that's on my agenda for, so just to specify, so I'm the director for community engagement here in Chicago. So I am going to be planning another baby naming event this spring for Chicago, but I'm guessing that we will have others pop up in different cities for sure. Absolutely, it's an amazing event.
Someone else was a bit curious, this question of how to navigate both a baptism and a Jewish naming ritual.
I mean, we're sort of learning as we go, but I can tell you that the baseline is expressing profound respect for all backgrounds, for the backgrounds of the parents, and understanding that opting in to multiple ways of welcoming a child into multiple communities is good and brings joy and brings meaning to people's lives. And I think at the root of our approach to that baby naming was understanding that a child who was baptized is in no way, or the parents' decision to baptize their child was in no way a threat to the Jewish community or to, Jewish legacy. If anything, by bringing them into the fold and making it accessible to them to have also a Jewish baby naming, they were able to make meaning in a Jewish space as well. Honeymoon Israel is there for those couples for the long run in terms of like navigating questions that come up over the years about raising children in multi-faith homes. We're learning as we go, and partners like 18 Doors are definitely there for us as well to support our couples.
So the last question, first of all, people definitely want to know more information about the baby names. So make sure that you put it out there on the screen in all the various places. They're hungry for that information. And then somebody was hoping that you might be able to share again the prayer for the decisions about gender.
Oh, absolutely. You know what? During the call, I'll try to find the text that we used, but this was really, I mean, I don't want to call, as a queer person, I just want to say it was like an especially profound moment for me to work on that. We used a prayer that we used really just an acknowledgement that as our families were bringing their children into Jewish community and doing all of these rituals with them, that there's a gendered aspect to that in some way. And we really just wanted to create some blessings and some energy around, in some way, just asking permission to hold those children in gendered spaces, with the acknowledgement that sometimes things change, and that as parents we wanted to really bless the parents with the love and the flexibility and the understanding to embrace their children as they grow and change over time in many, many ways, gender being maybe one of those.
Great. And Stephanie, one last quick, I'm going to sort of wrap up a couple of people's questions into one, which is that people are curious, do you do this in Washington? Are there places that, are you a national organization? Are you North American? How do we become part of the community? Where should we be going to find you?
I love it. So as I mentioned, Honeymoon Israel is operating in 20 different cities. Washington, I think if it's Washington, DC, they're asking about, yes, we're there, but we're also in Seattle. But we're in many different cities. We're growing all the time. And if you want to get involved, you can certainly visit our website, but you can also write to me. I'm just Stephanie@honeymoonisrael.org. And I would love to help anybody get involved in any way. We're currently not obviously running trips to Israel, but we anticipate that we will be as soon as we're, God willing, as we're able. And we run lots and lots and lots of trips every year. I personally go 3 or 4 times a year just from Chicago alone. So we always have application cycles open. Generally.
Great. And I am going to do like a fast, move on your feet. Stephanie was supposed to introduce me and Esther, except I think me and Esther, we can just take it from here if that's okay. Thank you, Stephanie.
We can.
But I hand it over to Rabbi Esther later.
So Rabbi Kay and I are going to talk a little bit about the High Holiday Reflection Project, and we'll share the screen, but I want to begin by sort of talking about how this all began. And the story really begins with Passover. We work for the largest and most diverse Jewish organization in North America with over 800 congregations. And after getting our congregations through Passover on Zoom, and really helping our congregations figure out what Passover was going to be, the next moment was really to sort of start asking the question, what are high holidays going to be like? And what are high holidays going to be like all over the country and Canada when we don't yet know what the world is going to be like in September and October. But we knew that the thing we needed to do was actually bring people together to start asking the right questions. And we began to convene groups of clergy, laity, educators, professionals, interfaith families, and really started asking questions about how are we going to do this? What does our audience need right now? What do our people want to feel? Asking questions about what are the high holidays needed for at this moment. And as we began doing that conversation, we also started to ask the question about what's our congregations were working so hard. For those of you in congregations, I know not everybody is a member of a congregation. We knew that the leaders in our congregations were working so hard. So we asked ourselves, what gift could we offer the congregations? What would be a gift that we as a movement could come together and offer them? While we were asking ourselves that question, we were also given an opportunity to make that gift a reality through the Righteous Persons Foundation. And we began to work with I want to share just a little bit about process and then mostly share the product. We began to work with 2 design firms, IDEO, who many of you might know is sort of one of the leading design firms in the world, and Mobius, which is actually a really fascinating design group as well, who really works with faith leaders and those in the tech world to kind of talk about how to intersect spirituality and technology. And we really worked with them on a human-centered design process about how to put people at the center. And we brought sort of what I would describe as unusual suspects around virtual tables to have conversations. And here's what I mean by unusual suspects. So we brought a professor of sociology at one of the leading sociologists of loneliness who teaches at Brigham Young University around the table with somebody who's created an app to connect greater connection in communities, along with a Muslim leader who's working with young adults, to somebody who's working in the Christian faith with young adults, to the founder of the dinner party who specifically works on creating spaces for young adults who are going through grief, along with leaders from our congregations that included people from diverse backgrounds and also non-Jews. So it was a really interesting group of people. And we asked questions like, what are ways of empowering the home as a sanctuary? What might repair or healing look like in this moment? What are ways of supporting reflection on who we were last year and who we want to be this year? And what are creative ways of marking a separation this year? So I'm going to share my screen and I'm going to share with you what we produced. And this is the High Holiday Reflection Project. I'm going to take you through the 3 experiences. And really, this website is meant to be an experience that you can immerse yourself in over the high holidays. Hineni, here I am. This is the time of year when we would ordinarily be together, when we would reflect on what has been and celebrate the sweetness of what is to come. But this year, the Hebrew word hineni takes on a new meaning. It's not just a call for our prayers to be heard. This year we say, here I am, as a commitment. And so I want to take you through these 3 signature experiences. The first is the spiritual. And really, these are activities that one can do, people did in community with one another or also by themselves. So this is really an opportunity to say, if we check in annually with our doctor for our bodies, shouldn't we be doing something similar for our souls? And isn't the high holidays really what that's about, a time to reflect? So this was an opportunity for people to click through some text, some questions to lead people through an opportunity to do that spiritual reflection. And there was also an audio version where you could listen. So also there was that multidimensional aspect to it. The setting was really about helping folks figure out who they wanted to think about being with during this moment, even though they couldn't be. I actually thought of this to sort of turn this, thought of this as like the ritual vision board for your high holidays. So we gave people some tools to be able to put collages, and this activity will be making collages and taking actions that collect us to who and what matters most. And we gave some suggestions of how to really go through this activity: gather paper and supplies, play your favorite music, make a collage, and we gave them some images that they could do. Lay out the piece of paper and then add photos, write words and draw pictures that represent your memories, people and things you would want alongside you at synagogue this year. The thing we asked people to think about was, think about who you would have been sitting next to in synagogue, and now think about who you want next to you or what you want next to you, as a way of centering you on this, on these days. And the last experience was about memorial, since so much would have emerged from the process was just everyone has lost something this year. As you can see up here, the traditional rituals of mourning, a funeral, Shiva, may have looked different. We may be mourning something more abstract that we don't have a familiar way of honoring. This small private ritual is designed to help you begin to process these losses and reflect on how they will change the way you live moving forward. And then I think what was different about what we did was some people are mourning the loss of a person during this moment, but people are also mourning the loss of events. They were able to do the bar mitzvah on Zoom, but like not being able to be in the same space with family was a loss. certain events that just didn't happen, like college graduation or high school graduation, and also losses of certain feelings. So this is a 30-minute ritual that allowed people to really help process and go through a memorial for whether it was a person, an event, or a feeling. I'm going to actually turn it now to Rabbi Kay, because you might have catched a glimpse of this. In fact, it's on the screen right now. There's a little link that says, explore more and go deeper. So I'm going to invite Rabbi Kay to talk about that. And if you want me to share a particular go deeper, whether from the spiritual, the setting, or the memorial, please let me know.
So one of the things, and I think this is important for us to also talk about when we're talking about reimagining ritual and just really reimagining any parts of our lives, is that it's also important to get good pushback and to get good feedback. So when we created the site the way that it was created with IDEO, and we shared it out with the world, we then had some conversations with the Righteous Peoples Foundation, and they said, we love it, it's beautiful, and I mean, this is going to feel a little circular, but they said, we want it to go deeper. We don't just want people who might be either inside of congregations or outside of congregations to come and experience what you've offered, which is beautiful and really powerful. But we then also want them to be able to see what is the deeper piece of what it is that you're sharing that comes from Jewish wisdom and Jewish tradition. And we had about an hour and a half long conversation, and we kind of pushed and they pushed, and then we all agreed, yes, we want people to be able to go a little bit deeper than just sitting down and experiencing their own feelings. We do want them to know the wisdom of 4,000 years of Jewish tradition. And so we went back, it was already out, it was already up, and people were using it. And we spent about 3 days, working really hard to write what we hoped were the right pieces to sort of be additions to what had already existed. So you'll see that on each piece, there's a little link that says explore and go deeper. And that will lead you to a written piece in our own site where you can learn a little bit more about what it means to grieve or bereavement, experience bereavement in Judaism, or what it means to find community in Judaism. But we thought that it was important to share that piece of this process also because it really was. It was a little bit of a shift. We thought we were done. We had this amazing, beautiful experience. We had this wonderful thing that IDEO and Mobius and all these people had really created. And then we got some really fair and important pushback, and we thought that was important too. So we're going to do a couple of things right now. The first thing is that I want to, I think we're going to be at the right slide. I want to bring us back to our ritual.
Yes, give me one moment.
So wonderful. So I want us to, again, in the chat, and remember to pull down that link that says all panelists and attendees, if you feel comfortable sharing this answer with everybody. We want you to answer this question again. This is the second part of our ritual. We want you to answer this question again of look around in your line of sight. We're now about an hour in, and we want you to chat in something that you see, an object that you are either envisioning or that you see right now in front of you that says something about how you feel right now. So either something that you can feel or something that you see in front of you that helps you sort of explain how you feel right now. Great, so we're seeing some answers are coming in. A computer, yeah, I hear that. And at this point, we're actually going to open up the conversation a little bit more. Esther, if you want to give some framing for what we're about to.
Yes. So I'm going to actually stop the share while people share someone noticed your beautiful guitar music grounds me, somebody said. I stopped the share and I'm going to invite Jody and Stephanie to come share their videos. And we're going to try and have a conversation amongst all of us. And if questions emerge in the chat as in the Q&A as well. But the first question I want to ask us to reflect on for your organization and for your people that you serve, what do you believe ritual is, and what does it have? What does it have to do? Ultimately, what do you think is the job of ritual when you think about it from your perspective?
Ooh, I can. Jody, do you want to go first? Do you want me to go first?
Go first and I'll hop in.
I'm going in. All right. That's a really good question because it's kind of esoteric. And, as somebody who my role is often explaining the esoteric and the metaphysical to people who really want to know about it but don't have a lot of context. So I'll do my best. I think ritual is two things. I think ritual is helping people it serves to help people make meaning of critical moments and critical relationships in their lives. And I think ritual serves to help people mark time and to locate themselves in time and space, which these days is like, time and space is sort of relative, right? I mean, every day kind of is the same day. So it's the power of ritual these days in this moment, I think is just, it's a big power. As Jewish community professionals, we have such an opportunity to sort of usher people into ritual spaces with the tools and the resources they need in order to really like take ownership over them.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, I think it is this way of like marking important moments in people's lives in ways that are personally meaningful, and then providing connection to each other in that moment and to something maybe bigger than themselves, maybe, and that I think that varies. What the bigger is varies. Is that Jewishness? Is that Jewish community? Is that tradition? Is that the community in which you're in? But I think, the hallmarks that I think we look at is like, is it providing some space to mark the important moments in a way that furthers personal meaning making and connection?
Thanks, Jody and Stephanie. Rabbi Leora K., do you want to answer this question also?
I realized halfway into Jody's answer that you might do that. Look, I think it's probably not radically different than what Jody and Stephanie said. I think that it's even very similar to that description that you gave in the beginning, that ritual is really here to help us mark the time that we are living and that we're experiencing on this earth. And that for some people, that's going to happen really fluently and really fluidly through Jewish language. And part of our job and part of our role is to offer them opportunities to do that, recognizing that that's going to change, recognizing that rituals that we have today are different than rituals that Judaism had 30 years ago, are different than rituals that Judaism had 500 years ago, and certainly different than rituals that we had 2,000 years ago. And that our role, hopefully both as clergy, as lay leaders, as educators, is to just offer people the openness and the chance to know that it's okay to change. And that part of what change allows for is to then have the framework in place that makes it feel grounding and foundational.
Yeah. To follow up on that question, do you think you would have given a different answer about ritual before COVID? I mean, ultimately, has anything changed? Has your answer around ritual changed because of COVID and what you've seen?
My answer is stronger. I feel more confident about my answer. I think
awesome.
This virtual world that we're living in has in some way really shown me personally just like the profound potential of ritual. Yeah, that's my answer.
Yeah, I think, I have a similar answer to Stephanie. I think it has expanded my idea of what ritual is, and in this moment, in ways that I don't think are going away, right? Like, I'm not sure I would have said 8 months ago or 10 months ago that ritual was possible to do via Zoom or via Facebook. And now there's like no doubt in my mind that those things are possible and that those things happen and that they carry the same weight and meaning as being able to gather in person in communal spaces, in sort of live, right?
So you both spoke about new rituals and shifting rituals that you have been a part of in your organizations, and Esther, us as well. What surprised you when you put those into place? What was surprising?
I think something that is surprising to me is how much power ritual can have in people's lives in ways that are so unexpected. Like, for example, we sent out challah covers to our community, like all across the country. We sent out these challah covers, which to me is like, all right, a challah cover, but we actually collected data on it. And something like, I think it was like 87% of the people who got challah covers said that it made them feel closer to Jewish community and that it inspired them to do Judaism in a new way. And I think that there's, you know, and we paired that challah cover with a challah baking workshop. And the feedback from that, people were like, they were writing to us and saying, I've never done this before. This has always been so intimidating to me. I'm doing this every week with my children now. Thank you so much. And it's just, it's not even the ritual itself. It's the way that people are invited to do the ritual and then the way that they're supported along the way. I think the surprise that I have is that it's like, if you build it, they will come. Like if you set people up for success in the right way, they will drink it up. That the power of that is just, it's been really beautiful.
Yeah, that movie was on our list last night of what we should watch with our children last night. We did not go with that one, but it is on the short list. What about you, Jody? What surprised you?
Our ongoing resilience as a people, and our ability to think broadly about the ways in which we connect to each other and Jewish life. And you know, one way that has played out, you know, I mentioned this earlier, the number of folks who are putting in requests to our Jewish clergy officiation referral service, or particularly around conversion, right? Like I sort of expected to see a spike around funerals. We didn't see really a spike around funerals. We saw a spike around conversions and weddings. And the ways that people say, you know what, yes, this pandemic is going on. Yes, this is horrible and people are dying. And also, I'm going to continue putting one foot in front of the other and continue to make life meaningful in ways that look different, but are still meaningful and important to me and the people around me.
Yeah, so I'm going to ask another question. I'm going to weave in a different question that's actually in the Q&A. So the reality is, and I believe this after having worked for over 20 years in the Jewish nonprofit world, there are some times when we get pushed and people say, you have to rethink, you have to rethink, you have to go back and look at this thing. We've been doing it for 15 years. We must change it. Now, sometimes it's okay to look at something that you've been doing for 15 years or 4,000 years and realize there's a reason why it's been working, and we don't necessarily have to change it. So it's important to sort of know where that space is between something needs change or something needs a refresh or something needs a radical change, right? Inclusivity conversations, versus when something might be working the way that it is for a reason. So I'm curious, first of all, about what are the things that you kind of went into it saying, no, I'm actually pretty sure that I do know how this is going to work, right? Not the surprise, but like, I'm pretty sure that the knowledge we have, the anecdata, which is a word I made up some months ago, right? The anecdata shows that this thing that we are doing is in fact the right way to be heading. So what's an example of something that you thought was the right way to be heading? And also a little bit of an answer to what happens post-COVID. Do these rituals stay? Do they change? Do we change them again? We just have a couple of minutes. So give me like a 1-minute answer on these.
I'm like racking. I've got so many examples floating in my head, but it's hard. What I want to say about this is that less of an example and more of just a philosophy that Judaism has been around for thousands of years, and Jews have been around for thousands of years, and you know, times change, but people don't. And our needs as people, our needs to be seen and held, to belong, to be a part of something, to mark time, to make meaning, none of that has changed. So maybe our maybe our delivery changes, maybe our audience grows and our tent widens. Those are all good things, but at the core of ritual is human need, and nothing about that changes ever. So that's my answer.
Yeah, I think, right, and I think the thing that stays the same is that Judaism is at its best when it responds to universal questions and needs, and that will continue, right? That continues on, and as Stephanie said, the ways that look may change, but ultimately, when we are responsive to what someone needs, as opposed to kind of, navel gazing, that we are at our best, right? We are doing our best work. We are our best communally, and we are like when we are not operating from a place of fear. And when we think about like a post-COVID world, I think that the interesting part of this is the ways that it has accelerated trends that were already happening, and just like it was like gasoline on a fire. And I think that will continue on. The things that we're seeing now it's not like the genie is going back in the bottle. And I think that is a good thing. I think we just have to figure out what the ways are that make us a stronger community on the other end of it. I think one thing we've been excited about is the move to digital space, because we tried digital programs probably 7 or 8 years ago with limited success. And now there's no doubt in my mind that this piece of our work, our ability to do programs via Zoom, is not going away, nor should it, because it provides an accessible point for folks who otherwise aren't connecting with the Jewish life.
Yeah, and I'm going to give sort of the last word and to wrap us up to Rabbi Letterman, and thank you to Stephanie and Jody and all of you who joined us and participated.
I mean, I could say amen, amen, amen to everything Stephanie and Jody just said. I'll conclude by quoting dear friends and dear teachers of particularly Leora and me, Casper Turkweil and Reverend Sue Phillips and Angie Thurston, who years ago were talking to us about ancient wisdom in new spiritual technologies. And when we talked about that with our people, there was a bit of a blank stare, including from us, like, what new spiritual technologies? And now we're living them, and they're not going away. They're not going away. And we can moan some of that. And I actually think we need to celebrate the creativity, ingenuity, and resilience of our people and our tradition, because ultimately it's about the wisdom. It's about the teaching and not necessarily the packaging that it comes in. So if this packaging makes our teachings more relevant and compelling for people's lives, then let's take advantage of as many as the packaging, whether that's Zoom, streaming, you name it. It's like, I don't even know half of the technologies. So that's what I'll say on this.
Yep, and as we're finishing up, just this one last chance to finish us off with our ritual. So just in the chat, if you want to include what it is that you either see in your line of sight or that you're imagining in your own mind that communicates how you are feeling right now. We will end with that. Thank you again to Stephanie, to Jody, to Rabbi Letterman, to certainly JFNA and the GA. We hope that you all continue to participate in lots of different conversations over the next few days. I know there are plenary this evening. And thanks to all of you for being here and for waking up early and making sure it happens. And we know that it only all happens because we can lean on each other. There is no pressure for any one of us to have to do it all on our own. Absolutely not.
you.